One of the things that struck me in your book, and I think because of the nature of the tragedy, people are just like, oh my goodness, like, of all people, why you? Why would this happen to you? And your response was, why not my family? Like, can you talk a little bit to people who maybe think like, oh, well, if I had this or if I had that, then I wouldn't experience this? Because a lot of people feel like if I grew up in this family, if I would have had both parents, or if they would have been present, or we would have had more resources, then I would not have had these traumas or these experiences. And yet I feel like your life represents, much like that scripture, the rain falls on the just and the unjust, that tragedy finds a way to get all of us, no matter what happens. Can you talk a little bit about that
Yeah, I mean,
response?
I think, I was fortunate that my parents were very community based. And so they would, yes, we grew up in Beverly Hills, but my mom was in South Central, 3 times a week. She loved to volunteer. She, created children's centers for people. There's a children's center named after her now. She was very much she grew up with the belief of, when you're blessed with a lot, your job is not to hoard the blessings.
Yeah.
You share the blessings in whichever way the Lord leads you to share them, but share your blessings. And for her, it was not just her money, but it was her time. And I think, because I've seen so much where my mom didn't shun us from things. So I used to go to children's hospitals, and when my mom would volunteer, and there were kids dying of cancer at 3 months, 3 days, 3 years, 13 years old, and parents of all walks of life who did everything right.
Yeah.
And we don't know why, people can, I did everything right. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Or the man with the yacht, the family who has a yacht, oh, they must not be going through everything. It must be nice. You don't know what's going on with them. You have no idea what's going on with them. People have and suffer from tragedy no matter what. It's what you do with it
Yeah.
is what makes the difference. My dad, for example, was kicked out of his house at 14 years old. His stepfather was very cruel, mean-spirited, and very abusive, physically, emotionally, and spiritually abusive. And there were 8 children, and my father was the eldest of eight. Eight. Now, imagine being in North Carolina and you're kicked out of your home at 14. Thank God, and he just took odd jobs. He got to um, he got to the East Coast by the time he was 16, 17, lived with an aunt. Again, took odd jobs wherever he could. Sometimes, he couldn't get back to our house in Jersey, and he said, sometimes if I was sleeping on a park bench, or thank God the YMCA actually did what it was supposed to when it was a real Christian, and they took him in. He said, but I couldn't go to a motel. I couldn't go to a hotel. I wasn't allowed to stay in a hotel. Most of them, or a motel, or anywhere. And these things, he took that and he thought, you know what? Well, that was terrible. But he decided in that he said, I always asked him, well, how did you get over that? He goes, you just accepted. I wish my real father, didn't go have another family and paid attention to me. I wish my stepfather would have taken care of me and taken care of my mother, my brothers and sisters, and sent me to school. I wish that he would have believed in me, but he didn't. But I believe in myself, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be the hero of my journey, and I'm going to be the one. I am going to win this journey, and I don't know how long my life is going to be. But he always said, he goes, I wanted to die a winner, and
Oof.
if that meant, I'm on this train, and, he was everything. Like, he was a bouncer, he was this, he was that, but he was always ready.
Yeah.
And he served all the time. And so he would serve on the train. And he said one day a group of kids, just being mean and bullying, and they asked him for tea and coffee, and he brought this whole tray. He goes, I was walking perfectly, and I loved this job because it gave me a place to stay. He goes, and then someone on purpose pushed their foot out, called him every name, N-word, this, that, idiot, that, and my father tripped. All the hot tea and coffee just went everywhere. And he said, and I said, where were you? He said, I was fired, but thrown off the train at the next stop. He said, I didn't even know where I was.
Yeah.
And so all of that inside of him, he said, I had to make the choice, because you have to choose how you respond. We all know it's really not what happens to you, but it is, what do you do with it? And he said, I didn't want to be like my father. I mean, my stepfather. I didn't even want to be like my father. I didn't want to be like any of those people. I wanted it to be me. And
Yeah.
I chose I wanted to be triumphant. I doesn't matter what the job was. He just wanted to be he wanted to run his race. And I think, he gave me that word. That's why, I stopped writing this book. I was writing a leadership book first. And then I stopped and I put the pen down. And my father said, "What's going on with your book?" I go, "I'm not going to write a book. Mom was just murdered. Like, I'm going to write like how to be your best version of yourself. What are you
Mhm.
talking about?" And he said, "You're really going to let that man, you're
Ooh.
going to let this person take your life too? You're going to let him take your life force too? You've got one life. And this is not a joke. And this is not a joke, Nicole. This is going to be over before you know it. Do not waste your time." And I go, "I don't even know what am I supposed to do?" He said, "Write about Jackie. Take your thing." And he just completely came up with this book. He said, "You write about your mother. You write the lessons you've learned and tell the truth." Because he always said, he goes, "Because you and your mother sometimes can get a little prickly with each other. Put that in the book too. Maybe it'll heal somebody. Maybe it'll," and it was such a great moment of,
Mm.
okay, I guess so. And it's that generation of, he goes, "You think it was easy for any of
Right,
us?" He
yeah.
said, "Nicole, all of us, whether you were white or black, whatever, if you were poor, you were poor. I was picking cotton at 5. I was picking tobacco at 7." He goes, "And I was the fastest. I was the best." He was very proud of his record. And he said, "But it was in 100-degree heat." He said, "There were no child labor laws, especially not for any poor person."
Yeah.
He said, "So people didn't have to pay us. People
Yeah,
didn't have to do
right.
anything because everybody had an outhouse. If you had that."
Mm.
He goes, "There was no heat. There was no," so you have all these comforts. And yes, something bad happened to you, but don't waste it. Don't don't waste this. You can learn from this, you can grow from this, and most importantly, maybe you're going to help other people.